Over a lifetime, there are only 4 or 5 moments that really matter. Moments when you're offered a choice. To make a sacrifice, conquer a flaw, save a friend, spare an enemy. In these moments, everything else falls away. The way the world sees us. The way we... Why?
Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was when the DCEU started branching out to build a more interconnected universe, largely to set up the Justice League. This film did have the potential to handle this effectively, while also course-correcting some of the problems in Man of Steel. But in execution, it created a weak foundation for continuity, and some of our most important characters have had really weak introductions. For this film, I'll be talking about the extended cut of the movie, considering it wouldn't be held back by any restrictions put in place for the theatrical release, and is considered the most definitive version of the story. So to continue my series discussing the DCEU, we'll be moving on to Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. The movie starts off with the Wayne's deaths. You're probably wondering what there would be to talk about considering we've seen this origin so many times, and it's usually the same at its core. But I want to talk about one change that kinda sours it and makes it harder to take seriously. Right before anything happens, Thomas Wayne clenches his fist and goes for a punch to the thief to defend his family. But if this guy is trying to rob them, then they aren't exactly in immediate danger. There's no reason to go for the gun, which would obviously result in the guy shooting him and potentially the rest of his family. I don't see why any reasonable father would put their family on the line, especially considering that the Waynes are rich. Contrast this to how Batman Begins handled the origin by having Thomas approach the thief in a more peaceful manner. He can already see the desperation in his eyes, knowing it's likely because of the suffering throughout the city. He wasn't worried about losing any money, and thinks this guy probably needs it more than him anyway. So he simply asked the robber to take it and go. This is good writing because it informs why Bruce would be so inspired by his father and where his empathy for people comes from, even the criminals. It also plays into why he doesn't want to kill people. The only reason Thomas dies is because once he dropped his wallet, the robber pointed the gun at his wife and Thomas puts himself in front of her with the intent of calming down the robber and trying to explain himself. But he gets cut off because the robber is visibly shaking and terrified, so he jumps the gun and shoots him out of fear. Instead of actively attacking the robber, he went in front of his wife, so that if anything went wrong in the interaction, if the robber even fired a shot by mistake, it would be Thomas that takes the blow for it instead. And even when Thomas is dying, he looks to his son and uses his last words to comfort his son. Not only does the show care for Bruce, but it thematically ties into Bruce Wayne becoming Batman. We leave this scene thinking that Thomas Wayne is truly compassionate for people less fortunate and will always put his family before himself, which makes complete sense for Bruce getting his inspiration from his father. Whereas in Snyder's vision, not only is Thomas Wayne reckless, but he doesn't even say a word to his son who is screaming out of fear and grief. He needs the most emotional support, and Thomas doesn't even address his own son. Instead, he just talks to his wife who is already dying, which is a setup for a contrived payoff later on in the film. He doesn't even at least say anything of substance like what we see in Nolan's version. In Snyder's version, we're only left with material that makes him look like a careless father who didn't even use his last words to support his son. It makes us wonder what makes this version of Thomas Wayne inspiring to Batman if he's truly this careless and neglectful. We then see Bruce Wayne trying to help his fellow employees in Metropolis, which is good for his character because it shows us that he cares about them. He's willing to step into dangerous territory to aid the people of Metropolis. I do find it a little strange that he doesn't suit up as Batman to help these people, considering Batman has a lot more resources and he doesn't know how long this fight is gonna last. So in the long run, it would be more helpful if Batman were to show up, but otherwise I think Bruce's character is fine in the scene. It's really weird that Bruce has to call Jack to get the building cleared. It seems as if Jack didn't start evacuating people as soon as the disaster started, and for some reason when everybody has evacuated, Jack stayed in the building, and he starts praying instead of running literally anywhere to escape. It's like he didn't even try to escape. At least for Bruce's character, they've done a good job showcasing his value for human life. At every chance he has, he's looking to save people in the destruction. It does a good job reflecting the fact that he wants to make sure nobody goes through the same tragedy that his family did. And Ben Affleck does a really good job playing Bruce Wayne. I think his motivation to dislike Superman makes sense, considering that he comes across as extremely reckless and uncaring throughout the Battle of Metropolis. Years later, Lois is seen with Jimmy Olsen conducting an interview in Africa. Secretly, they're being tracked by the CIA, so when doing this mission, For some reason, Jimmy decides to hide this tracker in his camera? Did none of them, not even the CIA, consider the possibility that their stuff gets searched for trackers? These are terrorists they're dealing with. I don't know why none of them are considering this. They straight up say that drones pass over their heads every night. If the CIA needed to track these people, why not simply use drones? Are they really gonna bank their ability to track these people off two unarmed reporters having a talk with the terrorists? After Jimmy dies, we literally see that they're watching this with a drone. So what did they need a tracker for to begin with? And if this interview is meant to give information from these people and share them to the public so that action can be taken on political matters, why is a tracker needed for that cause? If Lois is already connected with Superman, then why doesn't she have Superman ready as backup for if anything goes wrong? Superman can just focus on her voice from afar, and the minute she makes any indications that she needs Superman's help, he could just fly over there and intervene. But instead she doesn't have a plan, and this is the reason Jimmy Olsen gets killed. Jimmy Olsen gets killed because Lois Lane was stupid. And considering it's in the terrorists' interest to check for trackers, why don't they check for trackers before putting bags on their heads and sending them to their base of operations? If they were actually tracked, then they'd have a location right now. So then things go sideways and Superman shows up to intervene. Slamming this guy through a bunch of walls seems like overkill. A crate to a guy's face is enough to kill in this universe, so I imagine slamming this guy through multiple walls would have been even more brutal. Is this the same Superman that was upset about killing Zod? Why would he change? And to make matters worse, these killings were all done to frame Superman for it. The immediate problem is that they specifically used LexCorp bullets to frame Superman, and one of these was recovered by Lois.
My guys in the crime lab, never seen one before. Recovered from the scene of the firefight in the desert. Not sold anywhere commercially in the world.
The metal was developed by a private company,
What company?
LexCorp. He also had private security contractors at the desert compound.
Some secret identity advice from an expert. Don't sign your work.
On top of this, even ignoring the fact that LexCorp bullets were used, regular bullets would immediately draw suspicion to the narrative. You could only argue that Superman grabbed a gun and shot them himself to make it seem like it wasn't him, but I don't know why any witnesses would be there to tell the tale if that's what happened. And plus, they tried burning their bodies to make it reflect Superman's heat vision, even though his heat vision doesn't traditionally burn people by setting them on fire. He cuts through them. I don't know why Lex thought this would work. If he really wanted to frame Superman for these killings, why not invest in actual laser weaponry that could mimic the effect of heat vision? We literally have this technology for manufacturing purposes. Cutting torches is a good example, and someone as smart as Lex would be able to apply this.
Vengeance isn't power. Anyone can take a life. But to give life, that's true power, a power you once had.
Honestly, compared to SK, I enjoy a lot of BVS, but something that's really hard for me to get invested in is Batman himself. I really want to like Ben Affleck's Batman, but this take on the character just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And personally, it just doesn't fully appeal to me because I also eat, sleep, and breathe Batman comics, so I'm a little biased. Don't even get me started on his portrayal in The Flash. I don't even know where to start there.
I would do a lot better just give you all that money, man. If I really want to end crime, I should end poverty.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I want to take this brief portion in SK's video to talk about action and inaction, which I think is super important when writing a superhero movie, or honestly really any story in general. I'm not a writing expert, I don't have a writing degree, I've never made a movie, I've never acted. This is just something I've come to see sort of a pattern of when watching and reading so much Batman and other superheroes. Now, I will be bringing up the comics. I know a lot of people like to complain about that because it's not the same universe, which is very valid, very valid. Zack Snyder is allowed to do whatever he wants with his take on the character, but I have the perfect baseline to compare what works here as opposed to here, so why wouldn't I use it? Plus, it's my video to make anyway, cry about it. No, but seriously, if you're someone that doesn't really like hearing about the comics, you haven't read the comics, you don't care about comic accuracy, any of that, that's fine, then this part of the video probably just isn't for you, which is cool. So I want to get started with something simple. Let's establish quickly, why does Batman not kill? I know a lot of people talk about this and it's been beaten to death, but I want to try to bring up some more unknown examples and explain why it makes me less invested in this version of the character. And don't worry, I have positive stuff to say. So let's establish why this guy, the prime continuity Earth Zero version of Batman, does not kill. To bullet point it, 1, his father was a doctor. He believed in the Hippocratic Oath and he believed in the inherent value of a human life. 2, he never wants to see death again. Part of not killing is rooted in PTSD. The reason he hasn't killed Joker or has flat out saved Joker at certain points in the comics is because he just hates witnessing death. 3, he believes everyone, including the Joker, can be redeemed. especially given the Joker is mentally ill and he thinks there is a good, innocent man deep down. 4, if he does kill, he might not be able to come back from it, and the line between killing someone worth executing and someone not worth executing becomes blurred. And 5, lastly, if he were to kill one of his villains, the GCPD would be on his ass hunting him, so it would be significantly harder to save lives, which is a more practical and pragmatic reason. So, with all of that in mind, when we see how this Batman interacts with people and what he does in the world, we can really get a lot out of who he is as a person. What he does tells us who he is and the kind of person he is. Duh. What he doesn't do also tells us who he is. It's the same thing as real life, right? If someone says please when asking for something, you think, wow, that person has great manners. And if they don't, then you might think, damn, you weren't raised right, fuck you. Like, you think about how they were raised by their parents and the people they surrounded themselves with. Now, there's a lot of reasons why we generally call Batman a superhero. Broad strokes, he fights crime and he saves people from danger. There's a reason why a lot of people call Batman selfless or self-sacrificing. In most adaptations, we understand that Bruce Wayne cares about Gotham City. He uses every single avenue he can to help fix his city. As he said all the way back during his first few years of being Batman, I want to use more of my parents' money, Alfred, to build a better foundation. My father's charitable foundation for the victims of crime and for the victims of poverty which spawns crime. Its work redoubled and rededicated in my parents' memory. As the very talented Chip Zdarsky so eloquently puts it in Batman issue 135, Batman helps. Now, does Ben Affleck's Batman help? Honestly, not really, at least not for the most part. He's been active for 20 years in Gotham and it's still a shithole. Per BVS, we don't really know what he does for Gotham. He brands and beats up sex traffickers. Hell yeah, that's stuff that definitely helps, obviously. But as we see, Gotham is still a shithole and Bruce has such a negative and toxic view on it.
20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left?
He pops pills and downs wine, betting a random supermodel, and he won't even listen to Alfred majority of the time. He's completely radicalized in his ideology, so much so that he is literally racist, and that is not a joke.
He has the power to wipe out the entire human race, and if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
Now, don't get me wrong, none of this is bad per se. I don't really like some of it, but it's unfair to call any of this bad writing so far. My big question to you right now is, why would he change? No, seriously, why would he change? Let's really analyze the reasons the movie gives us. Superman, for starters. They don't outright say Batfleck was a more traditional Batman before the Metropolis invasion, but I think there's a lot of subtext that we can take from in the opening of the movie and through scenes between Bruce and Alfred.
A time before, there were perfect things. Diamond absolutes.
New rules.
We're criminals, Alfred. We've always been criminals. Nothing's changed.
Oh, yes it has, sir. Everything's changed.
Oh, well, there's a new kind of mean in him. He is angry, and he's hunting.
I think people sort of underestimate what killing someone can do to a person, both in a fictional setting and not, and especially someone like Bruce Wayne, who experienced it at such a young age. Part of the rationale behind not killing is not becoming Joe Chill, not being like the bad guys. So this Batman just seems to believe things like that just don't matter. The line, I guess, has blurred so much to him that it doesn't even exist. There is no line. It's really weird because, like, what if some of the people that he kills have children? What if even one of the guys helping with the kryptonite shipment is just doing this for a paycheck to support his kids? Sure, he chose that line of work. Absolutely. That's something to be criticized and punished. But does that mean he should automatically have a grappling hook launched into his car and his corpse thrown around? I guess this Batman thinks so. He doesn't care about orphan kids or about any sense of due process. And that's, again, not all a bad thing. We don't see heroes like Captain America and Iron Man cuffing terrorists and Nazis, but we have context that makes sense for that. Tony doesn't really have this ingrained sense of morality that someone like Batman does. Steve Rogers is a soldier. He He fought in World War II, and killing is just a natural part of that. What doesn't make sense to me is why he would suddenly change his rules because Superman appeared. Even though Superman is out there only doing good, he believes that he should die. There's no reasoning with him or reaching out with him, even if he's being a snake about it, right? Even if he only tried to befriend Superman out of a sense of distrust and to find an easier way to get rid of him. I guess this Batman just doesn't believe in any sort of general reasoning. He's not a detective using any sense of genuine logic, which is fine, I guess. He's just lost his faith in people entirely, and we're not really clued in as to like the whole why. The years of crime fighting have weighed down on him so much that he broke, which isn't enough for me if I'm being honest. I can't really grasp onto anything that tells me why Batman, someone so dedicated to a symbol and ideology that he literally announces it on his chest, loses his connection with that symbol and ideology. He later readopts his prior beliefs, being more optimistic and having more hope in humanity after Superman sacrifices himself. But to me, because it's never really addressed, I will always see that giant pile of bodies stacked behind Ben Affleck's Batman. And going back to the state of Gotham, Bruce seemingly has done nothing to better the city. The only acts of charity in the entire franchise of movies is the fact that he gives money to Wayne employees affected by the Metropolis invasion, paid for Superman's funeral and Martha's house, and they were planning to rebuild Wayne Manor as the Hall of Justice, which is all great stuff. But this is just a general problem with live-action Batman. It just kind of misses the entire facet of Bruce Wayne that genuinely cares to make economic change in the city outside of a few examples. And what exactly does this version of Wayne Enterprises even do? And don't worry, this also applies to other versions of Batman. It's just really strange to me that this Batman has just lost his faith in all of humanity. He stops believing in redemption or second chances. And it's because Superman, the hero, failed to save hundreds of people from an alien invasion. So I'll ask one more time, why would he change? I get the idea that he has gotten to this low point and Superman is the one to lift him up eventually, literally. And that's part of Batman, right? Is the idea of redemption. It wouldn't really make sense for me to criticize the belief that he can come back from all of this when Batman, this Batman, my Batman, believes in the redemption of people like Two-Face, Joker, Cassandra Cain, and even his own cousin. But there's just no atonement for all the carnage he commits. It doesn't even have to be in BVS. I'm just gonna spitball for 2 seconds. But imagine Batman somehow supporting the families of the people he killed, or really just any sort of reaction to him doing this to people at the bare minimum. That's the bare minimum line for me, honestly. But it seems in the DCEU, his atonement is forming the Justice League and resurrecting Superman, giving life instead of taking it, which is really poetic and beautiful, but that's just it's not really enough for me. People died, not just goons, but people. Bad people, yes, but still human beings. And Batman just doesn't care because Superman came to Earth and brought an alien invasion with him. I feel like this universe just refuses to grapple with the heavy implications that come with this. The only time they do is with Superman, funnily enough, and I think that's a really cool part of the movie. Superman wants to hold Batman accountable for his methods and the fear he's instilling in his city. Clark believes he's doing more harm than good after visiting Gotham and seeing how absolutely awful he is. That is a good sense of world building and natural progression that I can really appreciate. But that doesn't mean the whole premise of Batman killing isn't half-baked. Moving topics, he's also lost Dick Grayson, and I guess seen everyone around him turn bad or die. Which, yes, losing a Robin, especially Dick, would ruin Bruce in the comics. He almost killed Lex Luthor because he thought he killed Dick Grayson. And losing Jason Todd brought him to a super low point. He never killed anybody though. He never killed, but he was brought very close to that point and was brought back by Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, and Alfred. And it also doesn't help in this universe that Alfred is really the only person we see that has any sort of commentary on Bruce's change. There's no other villains until Suicide Squad, and we hear nothing from any allies like maybe Batgirl or Commissioner Gordon, who appears in Justice League, but all he says is that he's glad Batman is working with other people again. That's it. Gordon from the comics would greet him with a shotgun and an arrest warrant because he's the GOAT. It's how Batfleck got to this point that just doesn't work for me. He's willing to mutilate random thugs for hire and possibly orphan kids. That tells me that he just doesn't care. At one point, he's just deluded into the idea that killing Superman is the most important thing he's ever done and that that's his family's legacy.
This may be the only thing I do that matters. This is about the future of the world. It's my legacy.
I like that idea on its face, and it's something I'll elaborate on later, but it doesn't really make sense when you start to think about it. So let me break it down. Bruce knows that aliens exist now, and his plan is to kill one that has been trying to do only good things the entire time. What if there's another alien invasion? This kind of thing reminded me of the 2004 The Batman cartoon, where Superman finally appears in the first 2 episodes of season 4. Lex Luthor wants to kill Superman, and his plan for any other alien invasion after that is he built these super powerful robots for planetary defense.
You saw how helpless it was during the alien invasion. We had no central control, no plan of attack. Instead, we put our faith in aliens. Well, no more. They're more than just robots, Batman. They're powerful aerial wireless transmitters. We'll have a single worldwide army. One that will ensure protection against aliens.
Lex Luthor's crazy, but it makes sense and shows that the character thinks about the sort of hypothetical of what happens if another alien invasion happens and we don't have Superman. Even Amanda Waller and the government understand that in the wake of Superman's death, the world needs protectors in case there's another alien invasion. And you can't say Batman is going to form the Justice League after he kills Superman. There's nothing in the movie that even hints at that. If Batman kills Superman, from Bruce's POV, there's no other defense for Earth. There is no denying that Superman is literally doing good. We see a montage of it. We see that Batman is obsessed with him, constantly watching him on TV. So he has to be seeing the positive impact that Superman is making, or he's literally just delusional and insane, which, because of this whole premise, he is basically. I could go on more about Batman's lack of being a strategic genius in this movie, but I'm sure SK's got that part covered. Zack Snyder and Ben Affleck's take on Batman is a character where inaction, not doing stuff, paints him in a very negative and unappealing light. And when he does take action and is doing stuff, it just raises more questions, and it has a lot of weird implications and downright doesn't make sense at certain points. I would like to show a version of Batman where action and inaction are equally as important and treated with a lot of care and attention to detail so that we can fully understand, we can see the big picture of where he's coming from.
God, I never thought I'd feel fear like that again. I thought I'd mastered all that. I have had an effect here, but not the one I intended. But the city can't change.
It won't.
I have to try.
I love this guy. He is my favorite adaptation of Batman, and he's practically a one-to-one to the comics. If you think otherwise, you know you're wrong. He is everything the character in my mind should be when being adapted, with the only downside being he can't see bullets in slow motion. Now, let's quickly talk about why he works for me and why Batfleck doesn't, because I know you guys just want more Escape. As I said, Pattinson's Batman thrives where Batfleck fails. Very rarely do we see inaction from Pattinson, so everything feels way more intentional. But there is really one important part of the film where inaction does help us understand him even more. As I said before, a lot of live action Batman missed the whole philanthropist angle. Pattinson is kind of included in that, but there's like a fat asterisk by his name. He doesn't do anything financially for the city because he believes that money isn't doing anything. Why does he believe that? The film doesn't outright say, but it's the Renewal Fund, the charity that his dad made to funnel money into the city.
Win or lose, the Wayne Foundation pledges a $1 billion donation to start a charitable endowment for public works.
Before Bruce finds out that Falcone and the rest of the criminal underworld have been taking money from it, Bruce would believe that despite putting money into the city, it's just not what Gotham needs. He believes that the issue lies in crime, hence why he's been Batman for 2 years and he's put so much into this.
Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up. Maybe it's beyond saving, but I have to try.
He just genuinely believes that fighting crime as Batman is fighting to preserve his family's legacy by making a meaningful change in the city. He wants to make change, and despite crime only going up, he believes he can make change. Oh wait, that implies he's an optimist, which is another great character trait in his corner. But when talking about action, seeing him do stuff will be something that helps us understand Bruce's motivations. Another reason I love this Batman, the Batman, is how much he loves his parents, specifically his dad. I'm going to show you my favorite line in any Batman movie ever, any Batman adaptation ever. Really hardcore glazing right now, but whatever.
All these years, I've spent fighting for him, believing that he was a good man.
That informs every single thing that Bruce does in the entire movie. He's fighting for his parents, more specifically his dad. Despite knowing that it's very likely Falcone had a hand in killing his parents, Batman saved him not once, but twice with zero hesitation. It's so clear even without saying it, this Batman does not kill because of the morals bestowed upon him by his father. So when he does things like this,
I'll spray paint your ass!
You don't care about your family's legacy.
What I'm doing is my family's legacy. He has to pay! If I can't change things here, if I can't have an effect, I don't care what happens to me. We don't have to be with him. You're paid enough.
You don't think that meant something he did then?
It means he took the Hippocratic Oath.
Let's finish this.
No. We'll get him. But not that way. Cross that line. You'll become just like him. All these years, I've spent fighting for him, believing that he was a good man.
I have to become more.
We understand where those actions are coming from. We understand why this is happening, and it tells us so much about who Bruce is and how strong his sense of justice and perseverance is. Like, this all just makes so much sense to me. Where does Batfleck's morality or lack of morality stem from? We know he was somewhat of a traditional Batman before this. There's 3 different moments that confirm it. I don't get why Batfleck turned a cold-blooded killing. The reasoning doesn't make sense to me nearly at all. I get why Pattinson in comic Batman don't kill. I get why Pattinson's Batman believes he doesn't need to be Bruce Wayne to fix the city. I don't get why DCEU Gotham is still a shithole when a veteran Batman is supposedly protecting it. There is one last thing I want to talk about before we part ways and you have to go back to that sweaty greaseball. I want to say something really positive and cool about Ben's Batman. You guys are here for this movie to get ripped apart, so let me leave with a little positivity and something for you to think about and hopefully appreciate. This is something I feel has never been talked about with Batfleck. He has almost completely abandoned being Bruce Wayne. He doesn't do much for Gotham. He barely knows how to act as a playboy, and he's very much enveloped by the Batman persona. He believes the action of killing Superman, something he does as Batman in the Batman costume, is his parents' legacy, as he's sitting on a demolished Wayne Manor, which is really ironic and really cool. And this is something talked about in the comics, the abandonment of Bruce Wayne. If all you have is Batman, then you don't really have Batman. The morals, the hope, the kindness, the perseverance of Batman does not exist without Bruce Wayne. And that's essentially what Ben's Batman is. Bruce Wayne, the man, has been abandoned, and with that, Batman's strong sense of morality. So if you want to view Snyder's Batman like that, there's something to chew on. When he really finds his own redemption, we see a little more of Bruce Wayne. He's optimistic, he's witty, he's kind.
I believe we were stronger together. We owe it to him.
I don't care how many demons he's fought and how many hells. He's never fought us. Not us united.
Here, Alfred, I know it.
What makes you so sure?
Faith, Alfred. Faith.
And this is, to me, where Ben Affleck's Batman ended.
Never thought I'd see the defenders of Earth united and fighting as one. It wouldn't have happened without you, Bruce. Your mother and father would be proud.
Hope so.
In this final scene, he's not dressed as Batman, but he's Bruce Wayne. It was the hope and optimism of Bruce Wayne that helped bring the Justice League together. And that's when this character finally gets some praise and satisfaction. Bringing life to Superman, preserving life on Earth, and saving people is what makes Thomas and Martha Wayne proud. That is Batman. And that is why I love a lot of Justice League. It's something I feel like a lot of adaptations kind of ignore, but this and the Batman address this duality very well. Ben Affleck's Batman overall just doesn't work for me. Same goes for Alfred, but I'm gonna leave that one to SK. I'm too tired. I really do like some of the stuff that's done in this universe. Bruce has a really great speech at the end, and I think he's basically perfect in Justice League. And then Andy Muschietti and Ben Affleck ruin him in The Flash, and he's a complete clown in the Suicide Squad. So I'm going to pretend those two don't exist, and it just ends with the Snyder Cut. Anyways, I just want to say thank you to SK for giving me the opportunity to be in his video. I haven't made or edited anything in like 2 years, so it was really nice to get back into a hobby I really love. Plus, there were also some people saying they really missed my videos, so I hope this makes up just a little bit for the time I've been gone. I love you guys, drink lots of water, and enjoy the rest of the video.
I had to try. If someone can be saved, I have to try.
Bruce Wayne gets invited to Lex Luthor's party. While publicly attending as Bruce Wayne, he enters Lex's building with the intent of a subtle break-in. After he starts extracting the files from Lex Luthor, he gets in a conversation with Clark. It seems like the intent was for Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent to confront each other as their alter egos, but this doesn't entirely work in execution.
What's your position, the Bat Vigilante in Gotham? Civil liberties are being trampled on in your city. Good people living in fear.
Now this is a good start because Clark Kent, being a reporter for the Daily Planet, would naturally have interest in addressing a pressing issue in Gotham to one of the most influential people in the city. He gets to do his part in helping people out without having his identity exposed. However, how Bruce responds to this seems out of character.
Don't believe everything you hear, son.
Now, if Bruce cares to keep his secret identity, especially during a time where Batman is getting backlash for the ways in which he has changed as a vigilante from the press and civilians, you'd think Bruce would hear this and play it off like he's not in support of the Batman. It'd be really suspicious if Bruce were to publicly defend the Batman in front of a news reporter during a time where it'd be most controversial to do so. For reference, this is something the Nolan trilogy handled much better.
Guy dresses up like a bat clearly has issues.
It's not the man who thinks he is above the law.
Exactly. Who appointed the Batman?
Now that's more like it, Mr. Wayne.
This makes sense because Bruce would want to avoid any kind of suspicion that he works with the Batman or is Batman. So it strikes me as odd that Bruce would try to deflect from criticism towards Batman as Bruce Wayne.
He thinks he's above the law.
The Daily Planet criticizing those who think they're above the law is so hypocritical, wouldn't you say?
This is what I'm talking about. Bruce knows that Batman is under fire, but proceeds to defend him at a public event in front of a reporter who can quote him on what he's saying.
Considering every time your hero saves a cat out of a tree, you write a puff piece editorial. If he wanted to, could burn the whole place down. There wouldn't be a damn thing we could do to stop it.
I don't understand. This would be super suspicious to people. Batman is being accused of violating civil rights and being an executioner. Those who have supported him or simply weren't concerned about him are now starting to question if he's crossing lines. And Bruce chooses now to openly defend Batman at the height of his controversy? Someone who has been Batman for 20 years would have to be smarter than this.
Most of the world doesn't share your opinion, Mr. Wayne.
Right here, Clark literally points out to him that his take is highly controversial, so it's going to be really questionable as to why Bruce is so defensive of someone violating people's civil rights.
Maybe it's the Gotham City in me. We just have a bad history with freaks dressed like clowns.
Is that supposed to be some roast towards Superman? Because Bruce definitely isn't giving the same energy towards Batman, who he's defending. Meanwhile, he's taking jabs at Superman and compares him to the Joker and Harley Quinn to justify not trusting him. Why would Bruce Wayne be openly biased for Batman and against Superman, knowing how controversial of a stance that is for him to take? Afterwards, Bruce's file extraction has finished and we later discover that Wonder Woman was there and stole it already. First of all, how did Diana even know that Bruce was doing this? Bruce walked down the stairs and was never followed by Diana, and she was never present to see him do anything down there. Second of all, why did she stick around and wait so that Bruce could notice her? He could have easily told security that she stole something from him and cause a ruckus. And considering Bruce Wayne is a popular rich guy, it's more likely that he'll be sided with. He could even send the cops after her as a result of this. So I don't know why she didn't just leave, and why does she even need this to begin with?
I believe Mr. Luthor is a photograph that belongs to me.
How could she know this? The world isn't aware of Wonder Woman because she hasn't been active in a while, so it wouldn't be public knowledge that Lex has this photo of her in his secret Justice League files. Later on, Clark goes on to investigate Batman some more after what he heard from Bruce in Alfred's conversation, suggesting that Batman is trying to steal Lex's files. He works on a story to push back against what Batman is doing, which Perry seems to have a problem with.
Police won't help. The press has to do the right thing. You don't get to decide what the right thing is.
And you do?
So whatever your reasons are for dropping it, I think you're doing the right thing.
Nobody cares about Clark Kent taking on the Batman.
The reason I find this obstacle for Clark to be artificial is that Perry White as a character isn't someone that runs a news organization for money or based on how many people will care about an issue. Man of Steel tells me that he acts on principle even when a story would garner plenty of attention.
Can you imagine how people on this planet would react if they knew there was someone like this out there?
Perry White is guided by principle rather than what people care about, and Clark is trying to inform the public about Batman violating people's rights and executing them without a fair trial. Not only should Perry care about this, but he should also realize that a lot of people would be interested in hearing this. Batman being a masked vigilante who fights crime is already interesting in itself to the public, but to hear him violating the rights of citizens with the police aiding him would draw further attention from people. Hearing that their human rights could be violated without a trial would definitely scare common citizens hearing about this, especially with how dangerous Batman is when he's your enemy. Soon after, we get a vision of Bruce's nightmare. It lasts around 4 minutes long, and essentially consists of a world run by an evil Superman, where Batman has to resort to using guns and is one of the only people resisting against him. This ends with Bruce being captured and eventually killed. Now already, I don't see what this vision is adding to the story. I know Batman is afraid of Superman, that point was made earlier in the movie, and Bruce's conversation with Alfred tells us why. We don't need an additional scene to show us this. this. There's nothing substantive to the overall story that justifies spending 4 minutes on this nightmare of his, and it ends with Bruce Wayne waking up, and the Flash randomly shows up to tell him that he's right about Superman, Lois Lane is the key, and he needs to find the Justice League. From a structural standpoint, this is such a meandering scene. We're apparently being told that time travel exists in this universe and that one of the Justice League members can pull it off. None of this is relevant to the central narrative, nor is it necessary to move it forward. Bruce already has a motivation to go after Superman. Some random guy he or the audience has never met isn't going to be the pivotal piece that makes or breaks his decision. It's never followed up with in the rest of the movie either. It's just a distraction from the narrative that teases the future of the Justice League, without adding anything or moving the narrative forward, which has a significant impact on the pacing for this part of the movie. Batman tracks down Lex Luthor's shipment of the kryptonite. He fires a tracker on one of their vehicles to ensure that he catches these people. At that point, there's no real reason to engage in a chase at all because you're constantly tracking their location. But instead of waiting for the vehicle to arrive at its destination and using stealth to steal the kryptonite, he proceeds to chase these people and tries to kill them in the process. He straight up slams into this car and flips it over into this random trailer, which could have had someone uninvolved inside. He takes that same car and drags it around so he can slam it against these other men. Setting aside the fact that many of these people are criminals, since we've already talked about his weak motivation to kill criminals in the first place, let's not forget that these cars would be driving into public roadways. Any car chase on a public roadway comes with a risk to civilian lives, so any superhero concerned with public safety would avoid car chases if they can. Batman is tracking their vehicle, so he doesn't need to engage in a car chase, and he has been Batman for 20 years, so I expect much higher intellect from him. He then blows up these people shooting at him, resulting in needless fire and explosions. Those aren't exactly friendly to the environment. This chase nearly results in the bad guys crashing into an oncoming truck on the other side because of Batman's decision to do the chase. And eventually, another truck uninvolved in this chase pulls in, meaning this is just some random innocent truck driver, and Batman actively removes himself from the path to avoid being blown up, but he allows the other vehicle to keep moving forward and speed right into the truck. Ignoring the fact that this explosion will definitely kill the criminals in that car, Batman just killed an innocent truck driver that has nothing to do with this chase. He knew their trajectory was towards this truck, and he just pulled away and allowed it to happen, even though he has a hook that can pull cars wherever he wants. He could have pulled this car away from the explosion, but he just watched it happen. Then crashes his car into a building that absolutely could have had people in it. He didn't even hit the brakes, and he still doesn't think to himself to maybe stop doing the chase and let the tracker do its job. Instead of that, he continues to speed around in this building so that he can ram into the same vehicle that he has the tracker on, and nearly destroys the tracker from that crash, indicated by how close the damage is to the tracker after the chase. And for all he knew, this crash could have affected other oncoming cars since this is a public street. If there is a shootout taking place in a public street, you bet this has a risk of harming civilians in nearby buildings. I imagine how dangerous it would be to randomly have shots being fired near the building you're in. So not only did Batman endanger people on the road, but he absolutely got innocent people killed, even ignoring the criminals he killed. This entire scene significantly damages Batman's character, and undermines his stand against Superman's collateral damage in Metropolis. He's doing the same thing and he could have avoided it easily, which Superman would take note of considering he shows up to where Batman is and would know of what just happened. While Superman is right to condemn Batman's actions, it carries a lot less weight considering the damage he caused in Metropolis and the fact that he clearly killed a guy earlier, or at least put him at risk of dying for no good reason. What makes a character conflict like this work is if these two had opposing viewpoints that they actually stood by. But when you have Superman confronting Batman on murder or recklessness, it doesn't come across as something he actually stands by considering his prior actions. And anything Batman holds against Superman was committed by Batman in this very chase, which makes it seem like he stands by the exact same behavior, and Superman's response to this is appalling. Superman basically lets off Batman by telling him to simply stop being Batman, without specifying which of his actions are condemnable. He doesn't try to hold him accountable by handing over Batman to the police when he's trying to act as judge, jury, and executioner. He just needs to grab Batman and put him in a police station, and outline Batman's executions as well as the damage he caused on the road. He can show them the bodies of the people Batman killed, which would include an innocent truck driver, but instead Superman lets him go, and this allows Batman to kill more people, potentially innocent people too. And this is after Clark saw a family crying for the death of a criminal because despite what he did, he was still a father. Batman isn't even cooperative at all.
Tell me, do you plead?
Superman just flies away after hearing that, which clearly indicates defiance and that Batman wants to kill him. Batman basically told Superman that he isn't going to listen to him, and he still lets him off. And what's interesting as well is that Superman has no interest in investigating what Batman was after. He doesn't look into why Batman was killing all of these people just to chase after these guys. Did Superman try to investigate what they were even transporting? If he had listened in with his super hearing, he would have heard them talking about kryptonite. And even better, he would have noticed Batman coming back to retrieve it. And considering that Bruce was already caught trying to steal from Lex Luthor and the party, Clark would be able to connect the dots. He would have realized what Batman's plan to kill him was. Instead of holding Batman accountable, Superman goes back to his mom to talk about how the world hates him.
I never wanted this world to have you.
Ouch.
Be their hero, Clark. Be their monument, be their angel, be anything they need you to be. Or be none of it. You don't owe this world a thing. You never did.
Even though he literally saved the entire world in his first movie, why would Martha Kent suggest that not being Superman is an option for him when that's literally what saved the world and his family?
He always believed you were meant for greater things, and that when the day came, your shoulders would be able to bear the weight.
I just wish you could have been here to see it finally happen.
He saw it, Clark, believe me.
Telling Clark that he owes nothing to the world is so uncharacteristic for Martha Kent. She wants Clark to believe that he was meant for greatness and that he can bear the weight of it all. Why does Clark owe the world nothing all of a sudden if he was meant for greater things? It sounds to me like she's telling him it's okay to abandon all of that and just focus on what he wants. You're saying the lives of a billion strangers are more important than his loved ones? Eventually, the court hearing with Superman takes place. Prior to this, the senator gets told by the witness that she didn't tell her the truth.
He paid her?
Not only paid her, threatened her.
Why are you talking about this private matter in a public area? Lex Luthor catches her mid-sentence because of this. You don't want rumors about this spreading. This could put this witness at risk. What's even worse is that the senator let her leave before the hearing instead of giving her any kind of witness protection. This allows KGBs to sneak up behind this witness and push her into a speeding train without being caught. She would have been alive if the senator actually gave her some kind of security. Superman eventually arrives and the hearing begins. Apparently Lex Luthor peed into a cup to own the senator based on some older conversation they had in the film. This seems like a direct hint that Lex Luthor is up to something, hence her frightened reaction. But did Lex never consider the possibility that the senator speaks up about it and says she thinks Lex Luthor is up to something? I understand that it's possible for her to be shocked and say nothing, but Lex couldn't have known how she'd react to this. She could have asked where Lex Luthor is and suggest she believes he may be up to something, which that piss jar was meant to lead her to believe. If Lex is already suspected to be up to something and the place blows up while he's absent, that's going to be really suspicious. Now Superman suddenly looks at the wheelchair as if he knows something is going on due to his super senses, so he goes from looking at it in the shot to completely looking away from it after it explodes. He already noticed something was off before it happened, so why didn't he use his super speed perception and moving speed to grab the wheelchair and fly it away the moment he heard it was about to explode? Why did he actively look the other way upon the explosion? He didn't even try to jump on top of it to absorb some of the impact. He literally just stood there like he's in pause mode, and his reaction to this is even worse. Henry Cavill has shown that he's capable of really selling sadness as an emotion. Man of Steel shows this excellently, yet when he sees a courthouse full of people blow up, his reaction is mild in comparison to what we'd expect from him, based on past occurrences of deaths. Even afterwards, where we see him saving people, he doesn't emote as much as he should. He doesn't have to break down and cry, but he could at least show some emotion in his facial expressions. Eventually, we get to see how Superman reflects on this event.
Superman was never real. Just the dream of a farmer from Kansas.
This means something.
Did on my world. My world doesn't exist anymore.
I want to start by questioning, where was this self-reflection after the events of Metropolis? Far more people died, and even ignoring how much of that is Superman's fault, he was still hopeful for what Superman stands for and believed in his father's dream. Yet in this movie, he is only thinking of abandoning Superman because the world finds him controversial and people died at the courthouse, so that therefore means he no longer believes in what Superman stands for? The primary concern of Superman was that the world would reject him and be afraid of him. Clark knew this but decided to be Superman anyway, even when he wasn't sure the people of Earth could be trusted. He turned himself in when he didn't think he could trust Zod to ensure the safety of the entire world. So why are parts of the world rejecting him and one bombing enough for him to believe that Superman was never real, when he literally saved the entire world by pursuing that farmer's dream? Superman believes his help was needed for countless lives to be saved.
I'm afraid I didn't see it because I wasn't looking.
Okay. Yes and no. Yes, he wasn't looking in execution, but the idea was that he noticed something and didn't stop it in time.
You couldn't stop it. You couldn't see
see it.
From Superman's perspective, the problem is that he didn't act sooner. So why does he think it's better to not act at all now? Are you telling me that Superman thinks the solution to people dying is inaction?
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
Lex eventually activates Zod's ship from the fingerprints he extracted from Zod's body. Now, when Lex was gaining access to Zod's ship and his body, I assumed it would be under reasonable supervision. He'd have to check in every single time he accesses it and would be under surveillance. But apparently he was always allowed to access the ship without anyone monitoring his activities. He literally created Doomsday because the government just allowed him to mess with the ship with all of this alien material used in the destruction of Metropolis. That's absurd, and I'm not sure how that happened. Lex then proceeds to capture Lois Lane so he could bait Superman into a conversation. He then flies up to confront Lex, and Lex starts talking about his motivations and his plans.
2 years growing, but it did not take much to push him over. Little red notes, big bang, you let your family die!
This sounds to me like his grand plan for 2 years was to put Batman up against Superman. He did so by sending notes over to Bruce Wayne and using the Metropolis incident to push him over the edge. So the problem I have with this, how does Lex Luthor know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? While Superman has been looser with his identity over the years, considering he left a trail behind for Lois to follow, Batman routinely operates in the shadows, and as far as we know, his identity has been well guarded. Lex Luthor has no established connections that would have granted him the identity of Batman. How could he have possibly figured this out? And why would his grand plan be to send Batman to do the job for him? Obviously, Lex has his personal gripes with Superman, but there's nothing personal between him and Batman that would have motivated him to force Batman's involvement. Batman isn't even needed for Lex to carry out his plan. All he needed was Lois Lane. He could have just baited Superman into a confrontation, and when Superman would try to grab him to take him in, Lex could easily just hide kryptonite in his jacket and line it with lead to ensure he doesn't see it, and allow Superman to be weakened by the kryptonite. Superman is powerless at that point, so Lex can do whatever he wants with him. In fact, Lex didn't even need to do that because he already knows that Clark Kent is Superman. Clark Kent doesn't know that Lex knows that, so Lex can schedule an interview with Clark or send someone else to do it, but have kryptonite hidden in whatever room they go to. Or even just capture Clark while having kryptonite on him while he's walking home from work or just chilling at his home, seeing that he's willing to do the same or similar with Martha or Lois. Simply having kryptonite and knowing Superman's identity gives him so many ways of overpowering him as opposed to the convoluted plan he goes with. He tries to frame him by using LexCorp bullets. He spends years trying to falsify letters to Bruce so he picks a fight with Superman. Somehow. The only way he could have gotten it done was by stealing Lex's kryptonite, but Lex was never planning on Batman showing up and didn't do anything specific to goad Batman into stealing kryptonite from him or even making him aware of its existence. Later on, he blows up the courthouse while suspiciously being absent just so he can cover his story about how Superman killed people at an event where LexCorp bullets were present. And if Batman fails to kill Superman, his backup plan was to create Doomsday using the Kryptonian ship in hopes that nobody is watching what he does with the alien tech. And even if Batman killed Superman, Doomsday would have showed up regardless. So even if Lex got what he wanted, he would have destroyed the world for no reason. If Superman killed Batman and failed to defeat Doomsday, then the world is still screwed. Why go through all of that if he could have just used the kryptonite to capture or kill Clark? Not to mention that if Superman scanned the city to look for his mother with the super senses like he did with Lois, he could have done it. Not to mention that Superman could always keep his distance from Batman because he's expecting a fight, which makes it harder for Batman to sneak a kryptonite-based attack. We interrupt the plot of the film to bring you a setup for the Justice League. For some reason, the film stops and teases the Justice League. That was what the plotline with Diana was leading up to, and this is completely unnecessary for the story and only pads the pacing, and it just raises more issues. The Flash is seen at a convenience store just minding his own business and sees a robber stealing cash. You're telling me that Barry did this and didn't even think to check the place for cameras before or after? Even if he felt rushed enough to do it in the moment, he still could have checked this place for cameras and then deleted the evidence they would have had. But apparently he didn't do that so that the store owner could keep this footage and it eventually gets to Lex.
Kind of defeats the whole anonymous superhero thing.
I don't know how Lex had access to Silas Stone's video showcasing his experiments on Victor. All of this would have been kept private considering the experiment went wrong and his son is clearly suffering to the point where he wants to stop recording this. How could Lex have extracted this from him? Why does Lex Luthor have Cyborg's logo before he was even exposed in public? His suit doesn't even have that logo. And if Lex had interest in these metahumans, why did did he spend years trying to push Batman to kill Superman? Batman is one guy who could at most utilize kryptonite to defeat Superman, but even then, he's screwed if Superman keeps his distance. If Lex was smart, he could have used his power within the system to put Barry's father at risk of dying. He could use that threat to force the Flash to use some of his kryptonite to weaken Clark while he's at his house or something. He could do the same to Victor by threatening his father, and use some of his kryptonite so that he could form a kryptonite weapon. But apparently Lex Luthor was banking on Batman to get the job done. Even then, his plan with Doomsday could make a lot more sense if he had the Justice League on standby and sent them to go after Doomsday. Forget the whole plan with Batman, just send Superman to fight Doomsday, and when Doomsday beats Superman, Lex could alert the Justice League. And this would eventually grab Batman's attention, who has kryptonite weapons on him. So this all makes Lex's plan even worse. We're finally at the moment the movie was building up to. The Son of Krypton versus the Bat of Gotham. While I don't think the setup is sound, at least there was an attempt to set up why Superman would want to fight Batman, and why Batman would want to fight Superman. Except the plot point that leads Superman to fight Batman is Lex threatening to kill his mother.
You think I'll fight him for you?
To save Martha, bring me the head of the Bat.
I have to go to Gotham to convince him to help me.
Which means that Superman isn't fighting Batman because he's a murderer who violates human rights and abuses his support from the police, and Superman didn't even come to fight Batman.
Bruce, please, I was wrong. You have to listen to me.
Before we got Batman v Superman, Superman already conceded that he was wrong to tell Batman to quit. What was the point of setting up Superman's reasons to be against Batman if they were never going to follow through with it when they actually fight each other? What was the point of the scene where he tells Batman to quit? He already accepted he was wrong before he even fights him. And why would he change? Nothing happened that would have made Superman conclude he was wrong to stand up against Batman. He just changes on the flip of a dime, and this never gets discussed. There's no payoff to Clark Kent looking into what Batman has done because he never confronts him on it, not even when they fight, which makes it feel like we've been cheated into this moment. Whether Superman disliked Batman or not wouldn't have changed the outcome of this fight or how it played out. And it's weird that Superman all of a sudden acts like he's wrong considering he just said this.
No one stays good in this world.
And even then, this is a really strange line to write for Superman. Lex Luthor threatens his mother, so no one stays good in this world? How does that align with the perspective of someone who only made it to where he was because of two loving people that took him in when he had nobody? When the love of his life is one of the people who accepted him on Earth? When a lot of people out there are inspired to do good because of Superman, even when a lot of people hate him? Since when did nobody staying good in this world ever cross Clark's mind? That sounds antithetical to Superman.
Lex wants us.
That's an interesting plan for Batman. Now what happens if Superman proceeded to disarm Batman as a result? What happens if he flies back and lasers him in the face? What if he snaps his neck? And before someone tells me that I'm expecting Batman to be paranoid for what Superman could do in this fight, just remember this line.
If we believe there's even a 1% chance that he is our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty.
So if there's even a 1% chance that Batman's plan here would fail, and that percentage is way higher than 1%, he would take it as an absolute certainty and find a plan that's less likely to fail. Like if he had the kryptonite spear on him, as opposed to on a random floor in a building that he's not even standing on. Superman literally has to grab him, then fly him to another building, and Batman needs to crash him through several floors before they even reach the point where he left the spear. He was just hoping the fight happened to arrive at this random floor when this could have ended up anywhere. Even if it was in the same building, that's still relying on them landing on the exact same floor Batman needs them to be instead of above or below. Superman could have tossed him in any building, towards any street, or on the same building they're at from the start. Not to mention that he doesn't even have his kryptonite gas bullets ready. He doesn't even have a weapon out, so it's not like he would have time to do so if Superman decided to knock him out with a speed punch, or just laser him in the face. To be honest, this plan sounds like it has a 1% chance of succeeding, not even 1/10. If Batman is willing to use kryptonite gas bullets on Superman, then why isn't he willing to use regular bullets lined with kryptonite when he literally tries using bullets on Superman to distract him? If these had kryptonite in them, Superman is dead, and it doesn't get much better when we look at Superman's side of the fight.
You don't understand. There's no time.
Yeah, so tell him why. If he doesn't understand, then Superman should just explain that Lex is holding his mom hostage. He never tells him during this fight, until the very end point where Batman is about to kill him, despite stressing how urgent it is. Instead of pushing the guy who already hates you far back, why not just grab him and say, "Bruce, listen to me and you'll understand. My mom is being held hostage by Lex and he's threatening to kill her unless I kill you. We need to work together and we don't have time to screw around. You got it?" If Clark says that, the fight is done, but he proceeds to toss him away and escalate the situation. He grabs him again and just throws him for no reason. If Batman doesn't understand, grab him so he can't retaliate, and just explain it to him. Why would he be more inclined to listen after being tossed around and beaten up? Why walk up to him, fly him against a building, then toss him into his own signal? Ignoring the needless property damage, Superman doesn't know how much Batman's armor can take. The throws he did could have killed him, and Batman is literally right next to the ledge of the building when he tries getting up, so Batman was inches away from possibly falling to his death.
Stay down! If I wanted it, you'd be dead already!
There's no need for Batman to stay down if Superman just holds him in place and tells him what's happening. It's like Superman doesn't even want his mom to be saved. And then Batman gets Superman exposed to kryptonite. So one thing to consider is that Batman has no idea how long the kryptonite will hold Superman, considering that he has never tested this before to see. Now, if there's even a 1% chance that Superman recovers from this, Batman needs to have some kind of preparation to ensure that either doesn't happen, or it doesn't save Superman even if it does. If Batman simply broke Superman's spine or his legs when he was exposed to kryptonite, there's not a whole lot he could do if his powers do return. Now, if you want to say that Batman wouldn't even take that chance, fair enough. There's an easy answer to that. Simply snap his neck and he's out for good. Now that Superman's powers are returning, there's no reason Superman can't just disarm Batman at super speed, which can easily be followed with Superman grabbing him and telling him what's happening. Instead, he crashes him down a floor and tosses him against a wall. It's gonna reach a point where he knocks out Batman and has to beg him to wake up to help him. And then he charges right into him and doesn't avoid the kryptonite bullet. He has his powers back now, so he has the capacity to dodge it. Now, seeing that Batman has underestimated Superman, has his suit damaged, and could have died in this encounter, I don't know what this dramatic sync attack is for. All Batman needs to do is snap Superman's neck. Instead, he carries him around in the slow-walking fashion, as if he didn't see Superman clearly recover from the kryptonite in about a minute or two. Why toss him off so many stories when he could just snap his neck? Use those blades on your gauntlet that you went out of your way to build in preparation for this suit to fight Superman. Do something to kill him. He then does some long speech and swings him around the pillars when he already knows that Superman is still recovering by this point and has survived other heavy blows even under kryptonite exposure. He should have killed Superman by now. But Batman finally gets convinced to stop because Superman finally decides to start speaking.
You're letting him kill Martha! Find him! Save Martha!
Batman starts thinking about his past again since Superman mentioned the name Martha. He starts to see himself as the killer of his parents, as he's reminded of his father's last words.
It's his mother's name.
And then after Batman remembers his past, he suddenly walks back and tosses the spear away to show that he's given up on killing Superman. Why would this change him? Batman has been killing many people this entire film. Are we meant to believe that he would completely change his mind if one of them mentioned their mom was named Martha? Does sharing the same name suddenly give Batman perspective on what it means to take a life from someone? Because that would be way too silly to base a pivotal change in his morals. Some have tried to explain this by saying Batman learned that Superman has a mother and realizes that she would experience the same loss Bruce experienced as a child, which I think is a better faith read of the scene. But Batman straight up mentions Clark's parents in the scene, already believing he has human parents on Earth.
I bet your parents taught you that you mean something, that you're here for a reason.
And even if this line didn't exist, the problem is still there, because Bruce has been Batman for 20 years. Is Bruce so incompetent that he doesn't realize that criminals could have families too, or even do what they do in support of their families? Why would a 20-year-long Batman change his morals based on if the people he fights have families? This shouldn't be news to him. Why would he change? This then leads to Batman saving Martha. He gets help from Alfred, who is already aware of what's happening.
Look, I'm sorry for listening in, but I've tracked the Russian's phone.
Wait, Alfred heard what happened with Batman and Superman? Alfred was listening in to the conversation, likely because he believes that Batman's mission is suicide. So if he thinks Bruce is possibly leading himself to suicide, it makes sense that he would keep tabs on him and ensure that he mitigates the risk. And if Alfred is able to listen into Batman's conversations, that means he would have heard Superman trying to explain himself himself. Did he ever think at any point to tell Bruce, wait a minute, Superman is trying to tell you something. He just mentioned Lex's name. He could be planning something. Even if you want to argue that Alfred is worried Batman might cut the line to stay focused on overpowering Superman, it is inexcusable the moment Batman does overpower Superman. Those times, especially towards the end, would be optimal for Alfred to speak up and warn Bruce that Superman likely has something important to say, hence his mention of Lex planning something. Batman then goes on to save Martha, so after having a flashback where he saw himself as the man who killed his parents, he proceeds to kill more people at the warehouse. If Batman realized that changing his rules was a bad thing, hence why he released Superman, then why does he ignore that change and proceed to kill more people? What's even worse is that Alfred literally criticized him for this earlier in the film. So if Batman is possibly killing people after having gone through a moment of change that Alfred heard, then why isn't Alfred telling Bruce not to kill these people? They doubled the damage to characters in this scene. Alfred has nothing to say about Bruce killing people again after having a supposed change by sparing Superman. So not only is Batman out of character, but so is Alfred. And Batman enters the warehouse where he's going to end up killing a whole bunch of people, starting with the fact that he's pointing this guy's gun in such a specific way where he aims around these people. Instead of just grabbing the gun and disarming him, he sees this guy set up a grenade and kicks this guy closer to it. If he at least tried using the grapple gun to move them out of the way, that'd be fine, but he makes no attempt to do that. He tosses a whole crate at this guy's face and paints the wall with blood. Batman stabs this guy on the shoulder, and while that's not too bad on its face, he proceeds to slowly walk up to him and punch him in the gut afterwards. At that point, it's not just the fact that Batman is killing people, but he's clearly being sadistic about it and causing harm to people, and considering he already overpowered everyone in the room, he's just wasting time punching this guy for payback while a hostage is in need of his help. And Alfred sees all of this and has nothing to say about it. And then Batman arrives in the room and prepares to use a gun on KG Beast. Okay, so even if Batman has to use a gun in this scenario, why can't he shoot this guy in the leg, or his arms, or shoot the flamethrower itself out of his hands? Why shoot the part that would cause an explosion, which extends the risk of dying over to Martha as well? He didn't have to kill this guy, yet he did, in a manner which increases the risk of Martha dying. If Batman didn't arrive in time, she would have died. Lex ends up releasing Doomsday once he's finished creating him. This leads to a fight with Superman and Doomsday. He actually thinks to bring him to space, leading the president to send a nuke after them. It blows up and Doomsday lands, leading to Batman drawing its attention when arriving. Naturally, he tries escaping and gets the idea to get the spear to kill Doomsday, but then he decides to bring Doomsday back to the city to get it.
I gotta get it to chase me. Back to the city. Back to the kryptonite.
Or you could just go to the city and grab it, then confront Doomsday. He already saw how hard it is to escape Doomsday, so he probably won't make it to the city if he draws its attention. And it puts less civilians at risk. And then Superman sends Doomsday to this building and blows everything up unnecessarily. It seems he hasn't learned from Man of Steel.
Did you find the spear?
I have no clue what their plan is to find the spear. They didn't know Lois would go after it, nor do they have a reason to believe she can do this on her own. Why didn't Batman tell Wonder Woman the location and tell her to grab it? Superman can keep Doomsday busy for the time being. Nobody thinks of this for some reason. We see that Doomsday's blast is vaporizing everything. Just look at these buildings getting demolished. So how is it that Batman hiding under a piece of relatively small rubble is able to protect him from dying? Why is Batman just standing there and not trying to retrieve the spear? Superman and Wonder Woman are too busy? Fine, get it yourself at least. You literally have a grapple gun that can bring you to that level. And even when Clark does get the spear, why is it that he doesn't ask Wonder Woman to grab the spear? The moment Clark picks it up, he's just going to fall over and fail. The reason we know this is because he couldn't even swim his way up when close to the spear. So there's no way he could fly over to Doomsday with the spear and be strong enough to stab him. And yes, that is also a plot hole in the movie that he's able to pull this off. He shouldn't be able to, and he should know this. Wonder Woman should be the one to do it. Batman can shoot a kryptonite gas bullet while this is done, and Superman could keep his distance and use his lasers against Doomsday to kill him without being affected by the kryptonite. Now, even ignoring all of the plot holes or the ridiculously contrived bits of writing that led to Superman's death, the payoff doesn't land for me, and I don't think it was earned, and much of this will time back to the earlier points I've made. Superman was never that compelling of a character in these movies, and that's really important in making his death stick with people. Superman's arc in this film is incredibly thin, and his progression is executed very poorly. Superman is constantly challenged by how the world sees him and the constant rejection, but how this actually affects towards Superman's progression is severely underdeveloped. We rarely have moments of introspection for Clark, and even when we do get them, his changes are never really justified. He decides that Superman was never real because he didn't do enough, as if he'd ever think inaction is the answer to not saving people. And he gets over that very quickly in the film with nothing to justify that. Nothing that addresses why he went into hiding to begin with. And then he randomly decides nobody stays good in this world all of a sudden, as if he has no faith in humanity, which never gets followed up on, so I'm left questioning on where he even stands on that after he dies. It's a silly line to begin with, but whether he changed on it still wasn't addressed. If Superman's death were to hit harder, leave more of an emotional impact, maybe there should have been more focus on Superman's trust and love for humanity, even if he needs to develop that part of himself. This is not meaningfully explored in the movie. Maybe there needed to be moments where Superman actually interacts with humanity, moments where he's seen as a friend amongst the people he saves, more moments where he directly inspires or uplifts people. Instead of largely focusing on the negative reception Superman gets, maybe the movie could have focused on how Superman changed the world for the better. If I'm convinced that the world would actually care if Superman died for them, then maybe the payoff would hit much harder. If Superman was shown to have more of a connection to the people he saves, if there was more focus on how Superman interacts with these people, then I would have imagined how Superman was thinking of all of those people in his last moments. But before we could get substantive and meaningful chunks of material that dives into that, before Superman could reflect on and improve from the many flaws that have been glossed over, he's killed off by the movie. Lex then gets arrested for his crimes, but considering that he still has access to the Kryptonian ship, I'm confused as to why he didn't make use of the Kryptonian robots to secure himself. None of those armed men would have made it in there, considering with all of Clark's strength, he struggled to restrain and take down even one of those things. And Doomsday is literally the perfect distraction for him, so Lex didn't have some kind of escape plan while this was happening. He just walked back into the ship so he could be cornered and arrested. Now, I've talked about how Batman kills people anyway after supposedly learning his lesson from Superman, but even after Superman dies, Batman falls back into the same mistakes he made at the beginning of the film. Let's roll the tape.
Civilization on the wane, manners. But who would believe me? I'm insane. I'm not even fit to stand trial.
For context, Lex is suggesting that even though he knows Batman's identity, it won't matter much because he's not even fit to stand trial. Batman knows this and wants to take advantage of this.
That's right. We have hospitals to treat the mentally ill with compassion. But that's not where you're going. I arranged for you to get transferred to Arkham Asylum in Gotham. I still have some friends there. They're expecting you.
The whole problem with Batman branding people is that when they get sent to prison, they get killed. So Batman acknowledges that there are hospitals out there to treat the mentally ill with compassion. He deliberately arranges a transfer for Lex to go to Arkham Asylum instead, a place known to be cruel to their patients, and Batman even mentions that he has friends expecting Lex there, likely referring to some of his rogues. So if Batman is sending Lex to a place he knows doesn't treat their patients well, because he's angry at Lex for killing Superman, that just shows that Batman is back to acting cruel towards people for selfish reasons. He didn't learn his lesson. We're back to square one. And what's even worse is that being branded by Batman attracts these criminals to begin with. The cell that Lex is temporarily contained in will have the bat symbol there. That would be remembered as a product of his anger towards Lex Luthor. Word of that could spread, and this could even make the news. So it doesn't matter if Batman actually brands Lex's body, he is still publicly associating Lex with the brand in some way, a brand which is known to attract criminals to kill people. If it's reported that Batman left Lex's cell with a bat brand in there, and the friends that are expecting Lex in Arkham Asylum hear of this puts Lex at risk of being killed. And if a patient at Arkham Asylum actually went out of their way to kill Lex Luthor, and the reason they give is because there was a bat symbol in his jail cell, that would make Batman look really bad. And a patient at Arkham Asylum would absolutely have a motivation to kill Lex because of the bat brand, because Batman getting a mentally ill person killed would reflect really badly on him. Batman did not learn his lesson. This movie has really good visuals, it has great performances, and I like the music a lot, but the script is a total mess, and it sets the DCEU on a path of endless destruction to the brand of DC. Superman was ruined as a character until he died. Batman was ruined from the very beginning. Wonder Woman was not a character, rather she was a shoehorned plot device with an ill-fitting plotline just to set up the Justice League. Lois Lane gets damaged as a character. Martha Kent gets damaged as a character. Harry White gets damaged as a character. Alfred gets damaged as a character. While Lex has a clear enough motivation, his plans are a self-contradicting nightmare, and that's most of what we get with this character. The entire plot is a black hole of problems. The setup for the Justice League has been messy and contrived, which poisons the well for this entire sector of the DC universe. There's no going back, and this is where a reboot was absolutely necessary.